Everybody all set? Okay. Listen, we're here to talk about the recent homicide. I think everyone has the timeline down right now. We can certainly go over that at some point with the questions. But I think we've heard pretty much the timeline about how it happened and things like that. This is not our first time. This community always hurts when we lose people in the community, but that hurt is that much more poignant when it's a child. We've been through this before, this is another case of that. An 11-year-old struck dead by violence, and I don't know about anybody else, but I always think about the potential of that child. What he or she would have accomplished given the opportunity to have a full life. But I also think about and hear the stories, as all of you do, with the case of Jeremiah. His principal described him as a friend to all, and that he had a passion for skateboarding and skiing. And when I hear those stories, as we have in the past with other victims, and you start thinking about the fact that this was just a child going through his life, going to school, making friends, having fun with the things that he liked to do until he was struck down by an act of violence, and an act of violence by the very person he should have been able to depend on the most, his father. And those are the things that we think about all the time when these happen, and we ask the question why, and we never have a satisfying answer, and we won't now either. But I do want to thank the community. I know the mayor's going to do it as well, but we apprehended this individual the day after as a result of 3 phone calls from citizens who spotted him walking down the street. Our law enforcement partners, the state police, were in the area when the call went out and swooped in and made that arrest. It was the citizens that alerted us, because even they aren't going to stand for something like this again when we have violence in the city, and violence directed toward young people for really no reason that we know of. Again, I don't have I have the timeline here, and I'm welcome to I will go over it if you'd like me to, but at this point I'd just like to turn it over to the district attorney's office, Mr. Fitzpatrick, to go over some details as well, and then the mayor, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks to SPD for their usual outstanding work on a case of this magnitude. As you know, Mr. Huff has been arraigned this morning. He's being held with no bail. I believe there's a preliminary examination date. It's unlikely that will occur. The case will be handled by the gentleman to my right, your left, Chief Assistant DA Rob Moran, head of the Homicide Bureau, along with Senior Assistant DA Alphonse Williams. They'll be presenting the case to the grand jury in the coming days. We have 45 days to do that. Life without parole is the possible punishment for murder in the first-degree charge, and quite obviously, based on the facts and circumstances of this case, we anticipate some type of mental disease or defect defense. Those examinations will be pretty much at the discretion of the defense early on, if they file a notice indicating that they intend to pursue a defense of insanity, but it's too early to say at this point. Myself, Mr. Moran, Mr. Williams, and my victim witness assistance coordinator just met with the mother of Jeremiah and several other members of the family, and I'm at a loss for words. It was just heartbreaking to hear them talk about their loss and the emotions. This, as the chief said, this is a very, very sad day that this little boy and this poor woman were shot apparently for absolutely nothing. I'll turn it over now to our great mayor, Ben Walsh. Ben.
Great. Thank you, District Attorney. Thank you, Chief. This is a heinous act. I think when you see such a heinous act happen that involves family members, you can't help but to think about it within the context of your own life. And for me, on Monday evening, I had literally just kissed my 11-year-old daughter goodnight. And as I walked out of her room, I heard a helicopter above, and immediately thought that the worst. And shortly thereafter received a text from Chief, and unfortunately my fears, I couldn't even fathom what would have occurred. And to read it, to kiss my wife and go out the door and to go down there and to hear directly from our officers who were not only there quickly but witnessed a gruesome scene, you just can't fathom that someone could do that to their family and to their loved ones. my thoughts and prayers are certainly with the family of those that were murdered senselessly. Thinking about them, I've been thinking about them since that very night. Also thinking about our officers and our first responders that were there and again saw things that no one should have to see. And I just want to express my appreciation for all of our officers and first responders for their quick work. It's another testament to the incredible partnership and collaboration that takes place every day between our first responders. When I pulled up on scene, the sheriffs were there helping with traffic control. We know the state troopers were involved. Obviously, SPD was on the scene. EMS was on the scene. Just a great example of partnership and collaboration that led to, thankfully, the quick resolution of this horrific incident. I also want to thank the public for assisting in apprehending the suspect. Again, we ask for assistance from the public every time. We don't get it every time, but when we do, it makes a significant difference, and that is certainly the case here. So, again, just want to thank everyone involved. Want to send love and prayers to the families of the victims, and again, all of our thoughts are with the victims, the innocent victims that died as a result of this heinous act. We're all happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Before we get into details about what happens next in the investigation, any of you can answer this, but I spoke on the phone with Jeremiah's mother yesterday. She revealed to me that he had called her moments before, after he was shot and before he passed away. Can you just speak to the heroism of that little boy to still think about doing that and try to get help?
Yeah, sure. I think that's accurate. I think he did make a phone call to his mother after he was shot. I don't know how to say it any other way than you did, Mary. It's very heroic, but it's just, again, it's so poignant to think about that in the context of how it happened, and that he's in this house still with the man with the gun, his father, a loaded gun, and he's trying to get help, reaching out to the one person that now he's the only person he can depend on now, which is his mother, because his father has just shot him. It's just terrible to run that over in your mind. Certainly he's heroic to do that. The outcome would have been, it's too bad the outcome wasn't better, but it's just so tragic to think of that happening in that house by his own father, and the only one he can reach out to is his mother.
Chief, you touched on it there with him making the call with Dad still in the house. I know that you talked about the broad timeline, but what do you know specifically about how much longer Mr. Huff was on scene after he fired, and at what point he left, given that obviously the arrest wasn't until the next morning?
Yeah, so a lot of that timeline, and I'll let DA Fitzpatrick talk about it, because I don't want to mess up anything with the prosecution as far as when he left and things like that.
Yeah, the simple answer is I don't know. It had to be very quickly that he left, because 911 was called almost immediately, I believe, by Mom. Correct, Rob?
I think that's right.
Yes. Yeah. She had the unbearable tragedy of listening to her son being murdered. It's one thing to get a phone call and find out your child is dead in a car accident or some other heinous act, but to be on the phone listening to your son murdered, she'll never get over that, ever. And but specifically, I don't know how long he was in there. I know it wasn't for very long.
David Huff's father also called. David Huff's father also called 911.
I believe he did, yes.
Was he shot at?
My best information is that Mr. Huff pointed the weapon at him, pulled the trigger, and either the gun jammed or was out of ammunition. So there'll be a grand jury will be asked to consider a charge of attempted murder as well.
Is there a motive? Any reason?
No, that's a very good question. We're still early on in the investigation. We're going to do what I will refer to as a psychological autopsy of Mr. Huff himself to find out everything about him that we possibly can, because, as I said, no question, I'm not revealing any secrets here. His defense will be a mental defense at this case. And we do not know what the trigger was, but knowing SPD, we will know at some point in the future.
Do you have any idea of where he went after he left?
No, we're still looking into where he was before. I believe it was 16 hours from last contact till when he was apprehended, so we have no idea what he was doing or where he was, but we'll find out.
When you say last contact, what was that last contact?
The last contact being at the house where he allegedly committed these crimes.
Was David Huff ever on police's radar?
Sorry, next. Go ahead.
Was he ever on police's radar?
No, good question. Normally I'm not allowed to discuss a defendant's criminal background, but in this case it benefits the defendant because there is none except a very minor charge from several years ago, not related, as far as we know, to domestic violence. But we'll be looking into his background and we'll know an awful lot more about him in the coming days. Sorry.
Where did you find Mr. Huff when you arrested him?
The troopers apprehended him. It's
South
online.
in Seneca, South Ave in Seneca.
Yeah, he was walking. The encounter was uneventful.
That encounter was remarkably uneventful given what he's accused of doing, the horrific act he had done within a day. How has he been since he's been taken into custody? Has he been cooperative?
I can't answer that because I have no idea. If there's any issue with that, we'll be made aware of that. But I haven't heard anything from the sheriff that he's been a problem in the jail at all.
He has not been a problem. Since we brought him in, he has not been any type of problem whatsoever. Yeah, so since he was brought in, as you mentioned, the apprehension, no issues there, and since he's been brought in, there's been no issues. Again, I don't know about over here. You'd have to ask the sheriff about that.
Dave Fitzpatrick, what do we know about the family logistics in terms of how often this boy visited with his father, visited together with the grandfather, whose
Yep.
house it was?
I don't know a lot of that, Andrew. I can tell you, based on my 20 minutes with him this morning, that they have unconditional love for that little boy, and they are some really hurting people. But we're gonna. I told them that we're going to be interviewing each and every one of them, but today is not appropriate. Today is a time for grieving, making funeral arrangements for the little boy, and then sometime, probably next week, Alphonse and Rob will sit down and we'll start interviewing them, as I said, because we want to know as much as we can about Mr. Huff. What did he do that indicated he had mental problems? What did he do that indicated he didn't have mental problems, or anything in between?
Was the weapon that he used registered to him, or do you know anything else about
Well,
the
it's a shotgun. We'll trace it. We'll find out when it was bought. I don't know at this point, Mary, if he bought it or if he purloined it from somewhere else. But it doesn't. It's a shotgun, so it doesn't need technically to be registered.
And what was the custody at this point you can share about the woman who was
Yeah, we don't want to forget the poor woman. This is a relationship that Mr. Huff started sometime less than a year ago. She's from Rochester. SPD had difficulty finding her next of kin to notify them, but I was just advised on my way into this press conference that her mom was in Florida and tragically was notified about her daughter's death. But we don't know a lot about her. I'm sure we'll be talking to Rochester PD and Rochester DA's office to check if there's any history between them in Rochester. I don't know how they met at this point, but as I say, in the coming days we'll know all of that.
Chief Cecil, I know there was a little bit of a lag when he was picked up and from when he was officially charged in the book. Did he speak to police during that time frame? Did he speak to your officers at all?
No, not at all. We were searching him. Onondaga County Sheriff's Office brought in Air 1, which the mayor mentioned was up for an extended period of time until they were about to run out of gas, looking for him in the wooded area. But we had no contact with him whatsoever after he left the house.
I meant more between when he was arrested to when he was in the Justice Center. That 6-hour period. Did he speak to officers at CID?
Yes, he spoke to detectives. Yes.
Do you know how many people were in the phone during the incident?
It's my understanding it would have been 4. The 2 deceased, the stepdad, and then obviously the suspect.
Do you know the custody arrangement for Jeremiah?
The what?
The custody arrangement for Jeremiah?
I don't know. No.
Do you know, Bill?
Yeah, is there any information on that?
On the
Do you
custody,
want
no,
something there?
I don't. I don't know if Rob or Alphonse have any. We're still looking into that. There's no indication that, Connor, that there was a family court proceeding going on. So if I can extrapolate from that, it appears whatever the custody arrangement was, it was amicable. But we're going to look more into that, obviously.
Time for 2 more questions.
Just to clarify, David Huff did live in that home.
Yes, that's our information.
All 4 were living there full time,
I don't think the kid was living there full time. I don't think the woman was living there full time.
but stepdad and
Stepdad and him.
okay.
Thanks, everybody.
But you just clarifying real quick, sorry, when you said that the shotgun had jammed, just wanted to.
No, I didn't say the shotgun jammed. I said I don't know. For whatever reason, when he pulled that trigger, a round was not expended from the shotgun. Either a mechanical defect with the shotgun or out of ammunition.
And he was aiming at who?
The stepfather.
So he did try to kill him as
Well,
well.
that's a grand jury's going to decide whether or not he'll be charged with that. We're certainly going to present that as a possibility.
If you don't mind, just one more. I know that you said that you're still looking into the particulars with the search overnight. Dispatch seemed to indicate that there might have been an actual knocking or attempts to go into his prior address on Shaver Avenue. Do we know if he actually physically made it to the village of North Syracuse last night?
I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, so we did go up to Schaefer. Other family members had called us and were concerned that he was there, though it's my understanding they never spotted him, nor did we when we got up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.